Hello and welcome to In Conversation. My guest today is Philip Morais. Hey Philip, welcome to In Conversation.
Hey James, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I'm glad to have you on the show today.
A privilege to be here. I'm looking forward to a lively conversation.
So today we're going to be discussing Intellect's journal Explorations in Media Ecology and a current issue 21.4, which of course is a special themed issue that you are very much involved with. Before we get into that though, I just wanted to ask a few basic questions. So where are you based and what exactly do you do?
I'm based in Windsor, Ontario. Since graduating from law school, my involvement has been with law in the city, but I'm also a PhD candidate, rather reluctantly. Without a doubt, there was an elephant in the room. In a world mediated by technology, innovators are unacknowledged legislators of the world, but I think we were successful in communicating that in the special issue despite obvious obstacles to tackling that scope of subject matter in the confines of an academic journal.
Oh, excellent. That gives you quite a unique position, I imagine, working in academia, but coming from a very different industry. I think that's something we'll probably get into a bit later. Just before I ask you a bit more about the conference, though, what sort of would you call your research interests? What are the specifics that you're interested in right now?
Well, my research interests rest on a primary literacy of the law on the books and a secondary literacy of the unpromulgated law, you could say, codified on the culture, playing on the concept of secondary orality by Walter Ong. I remember being red-pilled by that realization on Sunset Avenue. I was knocked out while walking by the law library at campus. Things began to crystallize. In a world mediated by technology, we need to reinvent literacy to the requirements of reading a technological society like a book. Are these two books of laws in agreement or do they contrast? Are they identical in their operational effect, one general, the other specific? Do these ecologies of technologies differ in their operational effect, though they are configured similarly to the laws on the books? This is comparative law spliced with an ancient technique. Isaac Newton, for instance, was reading nature as a book against scripture when he made his breakthroughs in physics. These ideas on law and literacy really drove me in the conference, along with personal autonomy for users. I'll flesh them out more for your viewers before offering additional insights.
Okay. And we've just alluded to the conference, which I believe was called Media and Space, the Regulation of Digital Platforms, New Media and Technologies, which was a symposium. So tell us a little bit about the symposium, how that came about, what your involvement was, and then how that led to the special issue.
I conceived of the concept and I detailed that in one of the footnotes to the introduction. It was flattering to have faculty work on my idea. Honestly, I didn't have to do this. I wanted to. I wanted to see where it would take me. It drew on my network. It also drew on my expertise as someone who had worked in the conference industry, choosing keynote speakers, negotiating speakers' fees, as well as the donation of the Marshall McLuhan typescript to the university. I didn't feel that doing an event at a university on a shoestring budget was beneath me. The conference has borne an extraordinary amount of fruit. There was a lot of short-sighted research out there on technology at that time, particularly robotics law and policy. The involvement of the faculty of law came long after a decision had been reached to move forward with the conference. It was originally supposed to be held in the UK. A person I worked closely with in Toronto is currently CEO at AMG World in London, England. And I feel like matters have come full circle since my publisher for this special issue derived from that event is in the UK.
Well, and I should add my congratulations and thanks on behalf of Intellect, because it really is a wonderful issue. And I definitely urge everyone, of course, to check it out. And they can do that by visiting intellectbooks.com. And I'm sure we can post a bit more information about the issue later in the interview. So with regards to the special issue, you titled it The Law and Communication Movement. So What is law and communication?
In a world mediated by technology, innovators are unacknowledged legislators of the world. The nature of legal reasoning needs to adapt to these demands. We need to move beyond content regulation and think synergistically about all artifacts in the human environment. Law and communication is sensitive to this counterpoint. In reconciling technology as the law to technology in the law, you tune them against each other like two strings on a musical instrument. Thus, law and communication movement very much in its musical sense. With a new set of laws comes a new set of politics. In retrofitting the old politics to the purposes of the new politics, a conservative or a liberal legal approach can be sharp or flat adjustments. A liberal approach that is more sensitive to technological change effects and less deferential to legal precedents and traditional doctrine, as well as a conservative approach that relies more on traditional doctrinal analysis and precedents. When we look around, we see governments worldwide struggling to keep up instead of getting ahead of this phenomenon, which is entangled with societal change. We find ourselves surrounded by the web, which in one generation began to challenge land as a source of wealth on Earth. This is as big a break as we've seen in 10,000 years since we switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, top corporations provide products and services for our online life. Speech is being challenged too as a source of the communal bond in an even more disruptive development. Users share their thoughts now worldwide without any verbalization whatsoever. We're post-verbal, and we're post-material too, after quantum computing. An approach through law and communication studies makes sense to fill in those gaps and to lessen those transitional issues should we wish to continue on this trajectory. It is also necessary to the solution of the problem should we wish to reverse course. The rules to civilization have changed, James. We need to know what game we're playing now. Ronald Dworkin, in his book Law's Empire, put forth his theory of law as integrity. Hockey as sport has more integrity today. Unwritten rules and violations are kept in better check. The unwritten rules of communications are affecting written laws on the books, often to opposite effect. Ultimately, this is an issue of making governance meaningful again.
Well, and leading on from that, what distinguishes law and communication from other movements?
In a world mediated by technology, we need new analytical tools for self-regulation or regulation of innovation when necessary. The necessity of user participation blurs production and consumption activity in the market. The same can be said for user participation in the administrative state, which properly harnessed blurs citizen and regulator. This is not and cannot be strictly an academic movement. The task requires the collective effort of society. All of society needs to move to meet this morally, ethically, and legally, which we touched upon to varying degrees in the special issue. Our decisions shape our destinies. We need to be able to choose with informed consent in order to hope to do more good than harm.
A very good point, thank you. And I was just wondering as well, what were your aims and the objectives for this special issue? And do you think that you've realized them?
Yes, in the sense that this collection was gathered with a desire to foster a broader conversation. The scholars in the special issue were split between both backgrounds. No, in the sense that this law and communication movement is a movement towards a law and communication theory, and frankly, we're not there yet. In the introduction, I actually used a simile of looking for a butterfly effect in an insect collection of chrysalises. I was turning to the arts as much as to the sciences there, in the sense that something has hatched but hasn't taken flight, so to speak. But what I can say without any fear and without any reservation is the road ahead is a bumpy one. If innovators are unacknowledged legislators of the world, then we need an apparatus to autonomously judge whether what we're being ruled by is just or unjust and react for reform accordingly.
Well, speaking about turning to the arts, there's something about your introduction that really piqued my interest, and I know it will definitely pique the interest of many of our listeners who work within the arts, many of whom are also film scholars. So I noticed you referenced the French New Wave classic Alphaville in your introduction to the special issue. Do you want to just unpack that a little bit for us?
In Alphaville, an entire city-state of the same name is run by AI. The main character appears to be a trench coat wearing secret agent played by the American actor Eddie Constantine. I disagree. I think it is his love interest played by the Danish-French actress Anna Karenina. Karenina was about 9 years younger than her husband and director Jean-Luc Godard. They announced their divorce days before shooting began. They shot in black and white, which fails to do justice to Karenina, who had blue eyes with brown hair, the perfect hues. The central epiphany of the movie is an interior monologue about Karenina's character coming to the realization of her love for Constantine's character, set to surrealist poetry, after which she unforgivably sets him up in an ambush. The last words of the film are her saying to him, "Je vous aime," I love you. The old AT&T jingle, "Reach Out and Touch Someone," is playing off of this capacity of love to renew and repair itself in the context of long-distance relationships. Alphaville is a lot like Sleeping Beauty. True love awakens. Let me tell you why I chose that as the introduction, as the epigraph to the introduction. When you're looking at technology as an extension of the body, that passage comes to mind on marriage. They shall be two in one flesh. Technology as an extension of the body is one body, but not quite one flesh. Like in a marital debt, bodily rights are exchanged over each other, and we receive pleasure out of the convenience in the use. Part and parcel to that would be another analogy of the couple being composed of a body plus a head. When we stop thinking about what we're doing, we cede agencies to these technologies and they take over. Sigmund Freud said it best in Civilization and Its Discontents. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all of his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent. But those organs have not grown on him, and they still give him much trouble at times.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit it on the head there. And that's a very memorable scene, one that I recall watching at university in my first year. And maybe I didn't quite get it the first time around, but I'm going to definitely rewatch that movie as a result of reading your introduction. And it's interesting what you say there, because it's definitely, this is an idea that has been sort of mulled over by many artists, I think, and there's many filmic representations. Are there any other films or any scenes or just, artistic representations in general that you think have tried to tackle this subject effectively? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind or anything that fascinates you, artistically speaking?
In terms of science fiction from that same era, there is an allegory of inner space being vaster than outer space. The Stargate sequence, for instance, in the film 2001, A Space Odyssey, a cosmic variation on a cornerstone of quantum physics, really that classic two-slit experiment that we're shapers and creators living in a participatory universe, a feedback loop in which we contribute to the ongoing creation of the present, the past and future. Physicist John Wheeler later pursued thinking along those lines, that our observations might contribute to the creation of physical reality. Remember, 2001 was made in the heat of the space race. Earth could be circumnavigated in a day or less. I think this resurfacing of the interior life under tectonic pressures of satellites and other components of the surveillance surround is key. The reassertion of agency against these technologies may lie in the interior life and in being a Magellan of the mind. Interior life is fast becoming one of the last modes of privacy left. the most powerful potentially. We should consider that when we consider what we mean by privacy now. The true function of streaming today is streaming consciousness itself collectively. Now, we might not know what consciousness is, but we sure know what its content is. It's words and images. And we fill up the web with words and images, things that only used to take place in the privacy of our minds. The only thing left is thought. As far back as 2005, in my MA thesis, I wrote about a Swedish game called Mindball, where you strap on headbands with sensors that pick up on your brain signals and you try to move a ball against an opponent. The direct streaming of thought online, telepathy or technologically enabled telepathy, if you will, would be a boon to commerce and speed up transactions in ways that would dwarf the dot-com boom. The technology has been there or nearly there for over 20 years. We might be able to do this today if we wanted to. Human-to-machine communication would take on a character, the character of the self-deliberation usually only achieved in lucid dreaming. Human-to-human communication would be a different matter. It would take on the character of utterances of pure persuasion. Identity would collapse, since in sending and receiving thoughts, you would internalize them as if they were your own. Sender and receiver become a difference without a distinction. It could touch off another sexual revolution too. The pleasure circuits of the brain could be directly stimulated in these exchanges. Mind sex might be more intimate than physical sex, if not 10 times as intense. Being head over heels in love with someone you never met and sharing an almost marital bond with them when they live hundreds of miles away might be a common, if not hotly pursued experience. Leonard Cohen actually explored this headspace in the song lyrics to Suzanne in the chorus. And you want to travel with him, and you want to travel blind, and you think maybe you'll trust him, for he's touched your perfect body with his mind.
Well, and of course, EME as a journal draws heavily on the theories of the Canadian theorist Marshall McLuhan. Does McLuhan's work figure a lot in your own? And what is it about McLuhan's work that you feel is so important?
The central synergy in law and communication, in my opinion, is technology as law. It synthesizes Marshall McLuhan's unified field theory of human culture, along with Lawrence Lessig's theory on the structure and nature of regulation on the internet. McLuhan's effort was one in which he collaborated with and was assisted by his son, Eric. The McLuhans explored media in the broadest sense of the word and came up with laws based on a set of 4 questions, a tetrad that can be applied to any artifact or idea. They thought of tetrads as a basis for a new type of science. I see them as a new type of environmental science to base a new type of environmental law upon. The common structure of analogical reasoning law and science share in this case is what marries them, expanding on the claim by Lawrence Lessig that code is law, which was configured in strictly regulatory terms as a coercive force on the body and body politic, whereas this is closer to a type of case-based reasoning. It offers new solutions. We would take technology on its own terms and by its own laws. Without Lessig and his work being well known in the run-up to the conference, I doubt these ideas would have been taken seriously among legal scholars. Let's not cut Lessig short. Now, McLuhan, along with Harold Innis, constitutes a cornerstone of medium theory. The benefit of medium theory is this branch of communication studies works really on the macrocosmic level where public policy and civic virtue should be situated, analyzing technology regardless of the content, evaluating a medium separately from its content in the experience as easily as a letter in the alphabet splits a consonant from a vowel in the phoneme. That radical analytical break that allows us to abstract in the reading process, at least according to Eric Havelock. Now, I similarly follow McLuhan in his configuration of technology as extensions of the body, which is a powerful rebuttal to the AI researchers and marketers who see humanity as having reached some sort of post-humanist phase. There are quite a few fronts in this war, you could say. In fact, our technologies under this lens of looking at it are the most human things about us. And so far from bringing in a post-humanist phase, it's Vitruvian man writ large against the entire globe. There's never been a more humanist time than the present. The Renaissance was peanuts compared to what's going on now. And I think that's something important to stand up and take notice of. A new technology becomes a new way of looking in the mirror and understanding human nature more deeply. Think about automation. AI is cognitive automation of our thinking skills through software as a service or product. Cognitive automation will obsolesce as many white-collar jobs in the office as physical automation obsolesced blue-collar jobs in the factory. This 6-month pause to AI research recently called for by the tech giants is simply an awareness of the potential disasters in the tech world. We need to prepare for those consequences or organize against them politically. The AI will be the receptionist. The AI will write the journalism article. Perhaps my next interview will be with a piece of AI. When everything's being automated cognitively, when everything's being automated physically, what's left for us to do and how we need to specialize is through very creative thinking. We should be dreaming out loud. Orators in antiquity did this with mind palaces. Users today can do this too, and in higher resolution, in my opinion, by involving mind maps, charting out these new realities, translating from images to words like Descartes did with going from algebra to geometry. Treaty Canoe by visual artist Alex McKay achieves this most closely. The most advanced piece of legal theory in the special issue is Treaty Canoe, in my opinion, perfectly illustrating technology as law.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you very much for that. That's definitely clarified. You also have spoken a bit about the Charter in Canada, for instance, and some of the protections it allows. Do you see some of the rules and regulations in Canada as being different to elsewhere in the world? And are we trying to aim for like a global language here, or is that impossible?
We need to hold in common a set of percepts, concepts, regulatory principles, and rules to have real and meaningful political debate about forecasts of future consequences, something akin to international environmental law. This is an example of the depth of the digital deluge. The internet has no borders. Its natural habitat is global. Those were the words of the Supreme Court of Canada in upholding an injunction against Google and Google v. Esquitec. The internet may not have borders, but law often does. Google got California courts to not enforce this injunction on the basis of undermining American domestic policy and threats to free speech on the internet. There have been similar cases in the Court of Justice of the European Union on the territorial scope of delisting requirements under the right to be forgotten. The lack of reconciliation of national legal systems to transnational media ecosystems is an issue. I don't see Canada as being different to elsewhere in the world, but I did tease out pockets of promise that I perceived. Though there is an acknowledgement in Canada of communication being obviously heavily mediated today, this fact would not get in the way of the technologically neutral, traditional content-based approach. The Broadcasting and Telecommunications Legislative Reviews Report, Canada's Communication Future Time to Act, which was dealt with in the special issue, is an example of this. How do you evaluate a tweet without a thought to the nature of Twitter as a social media platform? The attention to the report proved prescient. Bill C-11 passed earlier in my country this spring along similar lines.
Thank you for clarifying. That's another interesting point. And just one more question from me in regards to your introduction. I was again quite fascinated by your use of medicine as a sort of metaphor for law and communication theory. You at one point mentioned the dynamics of a law and communication theory in relation to practice is isomorphic with medicine. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. What can be said of theory and practice in the history of Western medicine can be said of them for a law and communication studies synergy. Theory can be interdependent or independent to practice, as in modern medicine. Theory can delicately blend with practice in an art of healing based on observation, as in ancient Greek medicine. The theory on both turns on causation. The practice in both turns on sustaining or returning a person to a healthy equilibrium on a case-by-case, fact-specific basis. In a world mediated by technology, a healthy media diet is as important as a healthy food diet in what information we consume by the sensory organ store as words and images in the brain and circulate in consciousness in what we could call the communicatory system of the body, collectively shared and individually experienced.
Well, then, if anyone out there would like to find out more about the issue and to read through some of these articles, do go to intellectbooks.com and search for Explorations in Media Ecology, and you'll be able to see all the abstracts and the aims and scope of this specific journal special issue. Moving on from there then, I was just wondering, what's next? Is this work complete? It sounds like there's quite a lot more work that can be done. Are you planning on maybe creating a book or following up with further conferences or more journal issues? What's next on the horizon?
Well, further conferences or more journal issues are out for now. This needs a big treatment, and I think we've scratched at it enough so that probably a book is in order. Theory and practice should be fully integrated, though. You need to be able to take it to the streets. You need to be able to translate it to all walks of life. The issue is all those parts need to be there to really make this whole and to really cash these ideas out.
Well, that's very much how we feel at Intellect. We think that theory needs to be firmly practiced on the streets as well, as you sort of indicate there. And in your opinion, is there anything that academia could really learn from business or practice?
The university is often 2 or 3 technologies behind what best business practices would recommend. There are benefits in moving at this slower pace, though. Not everything needs to make a nickel, and that is as it should be. You need to have a space to go and kick things around, really play around with them and see what comes up. You can just juggle. People think of juggling as a form of spectacle, but what spectacle actually does is bring your attention to something you wouldn't have noticed before. And if your juggling does bring attention to something important, then you're performing quite an essential service.
Thank you. And also, just with regard to the special issue, are there any other articles or highlights that you could just sort of go into in a bit more detail? I think it would be good to talk about maybe some of the other articles that are within the issue, or any points that you think are very salient.
The most important thing, I think, is to read this special issue as a whole. The selection and sequencing of the probe and articles alludes to restoring bodily integrity through perceptual equilibrium. Let me explain and recommend Adam Pugin's related article in the special issue for viewers interested in hearing more. For centuries, Europeans who could read aloud. The habit of silent reading became normalized only relatively recently after print. It changed Westerners' interior life and caused a loss of perceptual equilibrium. There was a loss of eye balanced by ear with touch mediating in the tracing finger. It became all eye-based. Now we have audiobooks. They're all ear-based. These flip-flops happen in music too, in all 4 seasons. Western classical music has better preserved sensibility involved in the reading practices of the past, though. So by positioning each piece as a part of a sonata, I was fiddling at that triad of the senses, the visual in the score, the auditory in what comes out of the instrument, the tactile in the tension stimulated or dissipated in an audience. Music is massaged by means of sound. I would love to tell you who we have on board too, other than Adam. Dr. Phil Morais was a past candidate in a federal election, and some of what he looks at includes good governance, public policy, and consumer consumption. Jeffrey Myers did his combined civil and common law degree at McGill, and then his doctorate in the London School of Economics and Political Science. His piece pairs well with what Phil did. Tatiana Krupi is a European scholar, and some of what she looks at includes professional practice, along with Tom Cooper in his piece in law and journalism, respectively. The Association for Responsible Communication, with which Cooper founded, was actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Thank you for that. And of course, just wondering what drew you to Explorations in Media Ecology specifically as a journal. Was that just kind of happenstance, or were there specific connections you had to the journal, or did it just seem like the right publication for you?
Explorations in Media Ecology was a good fit. Media ecology scholars were a group I went to in the past for an audience for this project, which began in 2005 with my legal turn in research dating back to 2015. Media ecology scholarship is an important body of literature being drawn on in this. The preamble to the Stockholm Declaration clearly refers to the technological component of the human environment to regulate. That blossoming of international environmental law was synchronous in the satellites around with a budding media ecology program at New York University.
Well, Philip, thank you very much for all these insightful thoughts. And it's been fantastic having you as my guest today. Before I let you go, because I know you have a very busy schedule, do you have any final comments or any thanks or any final thoughts?
As I said, in a world mediated by technology, innovators are unacknowledged legislators of the world. Living in integrity means more than crude calculations of the carbon footprint of our electronic devices. The law struggles to keep up, in my opinion, due to the lack of a comprehensive general theory, a law on communication theory specifically. It should be based on at least 3 approaches that are adapted for users: environmental justice as well as personal autonomy in terms of bodily integrity and informed consent. Let me flesh them out according to what we've discussed. As an approach of environmental justice, we need to reinvent literacy to the requirements of reading a technological society like a book. As an approach of bodily integrity, a healthy media diet has become as important as a healthy food diet. As an approach of informed consent, we need new analytical tools for self-regulation or regulation of innovation when necessary, thoroughly as we do with pharmaceuticals before they receive market access, globally as we do with natural environments. The answer is not media content regulation in the name of national cultural sovereignty, nor any merely exterior notion of freedom tied to constitutionalism either. The only way out is in. That's where the butterfly effects are. On a lighter note, I want to thank everyone at Intellect. You probably didn't know this, but you published my introduction on my birthday. It was actually one of the nicer gifts I got.
Wow.
On another lighter note, I want to thank editors of Exploration in Media Ecology especially. I became heavily involved in a trial and they allowed me to switch my publication date to a later one in the year.
Well, Philip, thank you so much for your time. And again, I just want to offer my personal congratulations and the congratulations of everyone at Intellect. You've delivered a fantastic special issue of what is also a fantastic journal. So you should be really proud. And I do urge everyone to go and check it out. intellectbooks.com, Journal of Media Ecologies. Take a look at that.
Thanks, James. The universe is unfolding as it should. Have a good day.